Hey, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. I hope everyone at your end, including you, are safe. On behalf of All India Oracle Users Group, I would like to welcome you to Oracle Groundbreaker Yatra 2020 online webinar series. Registrations are still open. It takes 2 minutes to complete. Please pass the information to your connections. So we are in day 4. Still, we have 100 plus hours of learning. As you can see in this picture, this is one of the largest Oracle Users Group webinar series with the 14 days, 125 plus hours of non-stop learning. We have 100 plus speakers, 100 plus sessions. One of the highlights of Groundbreaker Yatra is we are able to bring 60 plus Oracle Ace community and Java champions in one stage. So this is normally happens at Oracle Open World. And also you can see that we are running around 8 sessions starting from 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. And today is more of focusing on community talks and hands-on labs. So please check each everyday agenda from our website. So this is like a third session of fourth day, and we already covered around 24, 20, 26 sessions. So please check the agenda. And before going to the main session. So a brief introduction to AIOG, All India Oracle Users Group, is one of the largest Oracle Users Group in the APAC region. This is the something like a platform created for Oracle community to learn, network, and share about Oracle. And a brief history of Yatra, or you can call tour. So we normally run our annual conference called Sangam in Bangalore or Hyderabad alternative years. So it was challenging for other users located in other cities to support. We started taking a bunch of key speakers to major cities in India. Started with 5 cities in 2013, and the last year we covered around 10 cities in 15 days. It was challenging, but it was fun. And Jim was with us in 5 cities. So this year, as we all know, due to global pandemic, we are hosting virtual online webinar. The good part of this webinar is we were able to bring most of Oracle gurus across the globe. So do not miss a unique opportunity to learn and expand your network virtually. And I'll keep the slide for a few seconds. This is very important slide. We encourage you to take a screenshot of this and tweet about this program using OG Yatra and AIOG. And this is absolutely not promotional slide. Maybe you're thinking it's a promotional slide, but you're going to get three things out of this. Number one is convey means you are able to connect to the speaker, and also you're able to connect the connections virtually. And number three, it's your wish if you want to thank us. Because trust us, we underestimated this virtual conferences. I think myself and my core team, we are just sleeping only 4 hours a day, and it's not easy, by the way. And so that way you can get the three things out of this sharing in Twitter. And coming to today's, sorry, not today, means the current session, we have Zim Grizanzio. He's a senior program manager on Oracle Groundbreakers corporate marketing team. He has been building software communities for over 20 years in starting from Sun, Oracle, and independently. His background is technical writing. He's also basically based on Japan, and it is also late now, I think. Apart from his bio, I think Jim is really a great supporter of All India Oracle Users Group, and you can watch number of interviews are going on right now. I feel we are actually Jim is actually competing with us. He's actually going ahead of us, and he's meeting speakers and he's getting the information. So it's very important. I don't know how many of you really watching Jim's videos. I think the best thing is go and connect him in Twitter, and you'll see, like, you may be thinking it's like a 20 minutes video, but this is going to give lot of benefit. Okay, because the when, for example, Oracle speakers or Oracle Ace program speakers or Java champions, they're going to share their personal experience. They're going to share their journey to Oracle Ace program or Java champions. So it's spend 20 minutes. You can watch from phone or wherever comfortable, right? It's very important to connect with people, especially I think COVID-19 actually proved us saying that networking is very, very important. I don't know, you guys have attended Jennifer's keynote in the morning. Like 80% of the, once you grow in your career, right? We can't say like what year, but for example, if you are 10 plus years of experience, so you need a lot of connections and network to basically, change your jobs or, change in your career. So networking plays very important role in our software industry, right? So with that, let's hear from Jim. And thank you, Jim. Now you can share your screen and present.
Great. Thank you very much, Sai. Appreciate it. Um, so this will stop. Do you want to continue? This will stop other sharing. I think I say yes. All right. So, and then you. Okay, guys. Oh, there we go. Okay. Um, get rid of that. Okay. So welcome everybody. This is really great to be here. Thank you very much, Sai, for that introduction. Yes, I'm doing a lot of interviews with speakers. You have provided hundreds and thousands of speakers, so there's just too many for me to keep up with. Um, so basically, these are profiles I'm doing on speakers. So just a little bit about the technology and a little bit about the actual speaker. So what I'm going to be talking with you guys here about today is principles for building communities. Especially the concept of meritocracy. I've been doing this for quite a long time, and I've been involved with Linux communities, Open Solaris. I used to be the Open Solaris community manager at Sun before Oracle. Been involved with Java communities. So I'm going to be sort of pulling from all this experience and basically showing some pictures and telling some stories and going over some of these principles about how to build community and how to contribute to a community if you are if you're involved in any kind of a community. All right, let's move along here. So Thich Nhat Hanh, this quote here from Thich Nhat Hanh is basically summarizes how I feel about communities. He's talking about every thought you produce, anything that you say, any action you do, it bears your signature. This is very, very important because when you're working in communities, everything's in the open, everything's in public. There's nothing private about communities, right? So that's the whole point, is to be transparent and to share. So just be mindful of your relationship with others. And this is a very special quote for me. It just summarizes everything I believe about software development communities. And Thich Nhat Hanh is sort of a hero of mine. This is a young image of him. I guess he's probably in his 20s here. He's a Vietnamese Zen Buddhist monk who built communities during the time of war in the 1960s. So the ultimate stress. So just be mindful of everybody that you're dealing with. Okay, so all I'm going to show is 15 slides. There's going to be 15 images, 15 principles, and some stories, right? So we all know who this is, Sandesh Rao, and Sandesh has fully embraced the first concept of all communities. The number one thing to keep in mind about communities is that it's all about people. That's your top priority. If you're building a community, that is what you want to think about. It is the single most important thing. The technology comes second, everything comes second. It has to start with people. Now, Sandesh, as we all know, is famous for the selfie, but at a higher level, he's using photography here. And I'm a photographer, so I know all about this. I can spot a photographer a mile away. He's using photography to bond with people, right? And one of the nice things about photography is it cuts across language and culture barriers because everyone loves an image. This particular image here is in Bangalore from last year on Yatra, right around this time, actually. That's what it looked like. And you see the smiling faces and everyone is gathered around him. Now, he is a natural leader. It doesn't mean that you have to be that way. It just means that you need to recognize that people are the most important part of the community. Now, when you're building a community, you got to recognize that there's different levels to this, different levels to the people. The first level are people that you're trying to attract. These are the other participants, contributors, users, fans, really anybody that you're trying to attract. Um, Second level is people that you need to help you build. If you're going to build a community, you need leaders. You know, you hear Sai a little bit earlier. He's got the whole team of people who are contributing and helping to organize the community. You heard him say how hard it was to do this online conference. Physical conferences are difficult as well. This takes work. Okay, you need leaders to do that. So that's the second level of person that you need to attract. And you know, to be realistic, there's a third level as well. There's people who, you know, might get in your way. These are trolls. Every community has them, especially in open source communities and various social networks. And you have to deal with them. Basically, conflict. If you're going to build a community that's going to grow globally, it will attract, you know, people who aren't necessarily as friendly as everybody else. This is usually a minority, but you still have to deal with it. So the little secret here about communities, that I think it's a secret anyway, is that the process of community building is actually natural. All right. You know, from your own lives, you know, there's, you know, religions, and there's groups, and there's companies, and there's organizations. I mean, everybody gathers, right? They've been doing this, you know, for eons and eons. Human beings gather, they form groups, they contribute, they help each other, they want to help. And that's a natural process. So if you want to build a community, or even if you're just participating in a community, understand that that's a natural process. There's a catch here, though. Scaling a community, growing a community needs organization. Okay, it needs help. It needs organizers. It needs people to plan. It needs people to run operations. So you can, you know, so you can leverage the natural process when the community grows, you know, when it's small. But to scale it and to grow it, you have to put some structure there, and that's really what the rest of the, you know, principles are about. So we shall move on to number 2, planning. And building communities is an active and cyclical process of planning and implementing. Anybody out there who's any kind of project manager or an engineer, you obviously realize that whenever you have a plan, you start a plan, things don't always go according to plan, right? So planning and implementing are cyclical. They're actually tethered, right? You have to continue planning. That gets you off the couch. That gets you actually building something. But then you have to be flexible enough to improvise and change the plan. So think in terms of a cyclical process of planning. In this image here, this is Shoji Haraguchi and Matthew Dons in the middle there, standing, actually holding the Java Duke. We are on a train in Tokyo. I'm shooting the images. So I shot this image, and we're on our way to the Oracle Aoyama Center at the other side of Tokyo. And we're basically going to run an unconference, you know, called, you know, Bar Camp. And I worked with Shoji and Matthew for months on this project. It's not unlike what Sai and the whole team has done here. You know, it takes months to run this. So it takes months, you know, to build the infrastructure necessary for any kind of a conference. Now, this was an unconference, so this was a session where you go to the conference and you make up the schedule on site. Okay, but even conferences that are sort of more flexible like that, you still have to provide the space. You still need food. You still need security. You need a building. You need badges. You need all kinds of things. On conferences require organization as well, and you have to plan for these things, right? And so write a plan. Start with a single piece of paper, right? Update it, expand it, repeat it, and do a little bit of implementing. And this should sound familiar. It's very agile, right? This is the whole concept of agile is the iterative, you know, process. And by the way, having the Duke, you know, having a giant, you know, Duke on a Japanese train was really a lot of fun. It got a lot of attention. You can see a couple of the women there on the left, you know, they're looking at it like, what is this? So we had a good time. So Shoji and Matthew were really great. And by the way, we did a lot of the planning for this conference on Twitter, and that was back in 2010. So that was early times for social media. But we did the planning right in the open so everyone can see. Okay, the third concept is transparency. This is the concept of getting outside. You can't build a community from behind a corporate firewall or even from inside your house. Now, I know we're all in our houses now, but that's an unusual situation and hopefully a temporary situation. The concept is to get outside. Communities are about people, they're about face-to-face communications and interactions. In this image here are some good friends. This is Denise Cooper, Simon Phipps, and Tim Bray. These are all famous people from the open source community and also from the Java community. Denise, Simon, and Tim particularly taught me a lot about being transparent. At Sun, we were at Sun at the time. This is in San Francisco in 2008. And they were instrumental in the creation of blogs.sun.com along with the engineering team. And so Sun at the time was the second company to launch a corporate blogging platform, and we used it on the Open Solaris project to basically do all of our communications to the community. This is before social media, okay? So this is there was no I don't think Facebook was around at this point, and Twitter was in its infancy. So this is a long time ago. So we used blogs, and literally thousands of Sun engineers and developers and community people started blogging. And that was the main tool that we used to communicate to customers and partners and developers to basically flush out how we were going to build the Open Solaris community. And these guys here were really, really instrumental in teaching me those concepts. The only way anyone will ever know you exist is if you're outside. You can't build anything internally. You have to build it outside, especially if it's an open source community. And think in terms of the tools that you would use for any kind of open source community, really any kind of user community at all. You have things like mailing lists, you have blogs, you have social media networks, you have YouTube channels, you have all this stuff, right? Those are all tools that are hopefully transparent, hopefully out in the open. Those are all tools that you use to build a community. All right. Every single tool you have at your disposal is something that you use to build. So that's transparency. So let's go back to Japan here for participation. Number 4. This is up in Japan in 2018, the Japan Java User Group. These are two of my friends, Takashi and Yohei. They're in the blue shirts. I watched in just utter fascination watching them organize conferences in the community in Tokyo. This particular conference here runs twice a year. They get 1,000 people, for a whole day, and it's a long day. It's early in the morning that ends late at night. And they are fantastic at understanding the concept of participation, getting everybody to get involved. I think they understand fundamentally that you want to build trust relationships that are built on merit, and people that are contributing, right? They had this particular event, it's twice a year, and it's a conference where they have scheduled talks all day long, but at night they have the lightning talks, and that's where anyone can participate, but they do it in a unique way. They do it as a party, right? They have sushi and all kinds of food, beer and wine and things like that. And you put hundreds of people in a room, you just are eating, it's just a social experience. And they start doing lightning talks. And these things are hysterical. They're really, really funny. A lot of the times people will say, oh, the Japanese are very quiet and sort of staid and stuff. And yeah, well, nothing could be further from the truth. It's so loud in that room when they're doing these lightning talks. And I would say 20 or 20 or 25 or so people actually do them. It goes on for hours, and they're hysterically funny. Um, as you know, earlier on, Sai mentioned that I do a lot of interviews with speakers and stuff. And so I was doing interviews at this conference, and I wanted to do the interview in that room during the during the time where they were running the lightning talks. And the reason is I wanted to get a sense, in the background, I wanted to get a sense of what it was like, right? It was so loud I could hardly hear the guy I was interviewing, going back and forth. But really, really great. Again, the concept is participation. The AIOUG does a fantastic, a fantastic job of this as well. I mean, I've been to Sangam, I've been to OG Yatra, I've been to many of these events. And everybody who is on the community building team at these events makes you feel welcome. Everybody makes you feel involved. Everybody wants to get your participation. And that's not just Sai, that's everybody. It's the whole team, right? So it's just critically important to think in terms of participation if you're building a community, or if you just join a community, if you're just participating as a user or a contributor. Look around, make sure that the people around you are fostering a notion of participation. Okay, contributions, number 5. If you're building a community, you want to define the contributions that you want. You want to get very, very specific with this. And then after you have defined it, you want to expect that the community will offer you more ideas, okay? You don't have all the ideas that in terms of contributions of what people are going to give, but give it a start, get specific, write it down, publish it on the website, publicize it, and then start taking feedback from the community. If someone wants to offer you something that's not appropriate, okay, then you can talk to them. But in general, people are going to offer things that are going to be consistent with whatever your community is trying to do, whether you're building an operating system or a tool or a new app for the phone or whatever. So the two guys in this image here, this is back in 2008 at Community One. Community One is a conference that Sun ran sort of adjacent to Java One. And basically it was for all the Sun open source projects that weren't Java, essentially. And it was more of a less structured event. The guy on the left is Rich Green. He was the executive vice president during the time that we were open sourcing all of our software. So he certainly got and understood all the concepts of contributions and community building. I know Rich really, really well. And the guy on the right is Stephen Hahn. Stephen is a physicist, a PhD in physics, actually. And he was one of the kernel developers on the Open Solaris project. I got to know Stephen very, very well because he was the tech lead actually on the project. And I would sit in his office and we would go over in detail the contributions that he specifically was looking for the project. Now, Stephen was a kernel developer, so he was looking for code. Okay, so he told me in very explicit terms to go around the world looking for developers, new people who can contribute code to the kernel. Right, that's the most valuable thing that he was focusing on. It doesn't mean that you always need kernel code. Okay, it just means that he knew what he wanted. All right, and so did Rich, and so did many, many others. So that's the point here, is to get very, very specific about what you want from the community that you're building, because in theory you're building it so you're one of the leaders, right? And then as contributions start to come in, you need to recognize the people in the community. You heard earlier from Jen. She spoke at length about the Oracle programs, the Oracle Aces, Groundbreaker Ambassadors, Java Champions. Oracle has these programs, they are more or less recognition programs. They are communities. And I've been interviewing all these speakers that are part of all these communities, and they describe in detail, in explicit detail, that this is in fact a community. It's not just a, group of people following Oracle. They have their own relationships. They're giving feedback to Oracle. Many times people are filing bug reports. They're saying, hey, this feature really isn't ready yet. You need to fix X, Y, and Z, and Oracle fixes X, Y, and Z, right? So I mean, it goes back and forth. It goes both ways. Very, very important. And so this is Oracle's way of recognizing these people, whether they're developers or DBAs, open source developers, Java developers, whatever. They all fit, and we have programs for all these things. So contributions, define your contributions, get very, very clear with that. It's like a potential list of contributions for an open source project would be like, obviously source code, tests, bug reports, various tools, governance systems, evangelism, distributions, graphics, branding, photography. It's a wide list of things. Okay, presentations. If you're going to be building a community, you're going to be doing a lot of presentations. Just like here at OGIATRA, which is a monster of a conference with so many sessions. When I was at Sangam, it's like, there's just so many sessions here that is just going on. You're going to be doing a lot of presentations. My main message here is to use your own voice when you're presenting. Try not to use somebody else's slides. Make your own slides. One of the reasons I just have photographs here on my stuff is that's what I am. I am a photographer. It's what I do. I take pictures. I tell stories of people. I much prefer to just have something very, very simple. I'm not very complex. And so, but if you're a developer, if you're an engineer, obviously your slides are going to be more technical. You'd be speaking to engineers, so go deep, focus, get nice and technical, make it valuable to the engineers that are listening to you, and focus. This is an image of me actually in a very rare situation. I was at Oracle Code in Shenzhen in China a couple of years ago, 2018. I was a fill-in. I was a replacement to be MC for the concert. Yeah, right. MC for the conference. And just like in India, China gets a huge crowd. There's 600 people there and many, many thousands online. My job at that conference was basically to be master of ceremonies for the keynotes, a couple of hours. You've seen Sai do these things, right? You're introducing speakers, you're bringing them up, down, you're managing the flow of events. We had a bunch of announcements as well, new products and stuff that came out. What I did is I tried to put it in my own voice. I was presenting somebody else's slides in this case. This is very uncomfortable for me. And so I tried to put it in my own voice. I tried to talk about hackers. I tried to talk about open source, because in reality, all those cloud technologies that were shown, they were all open source, right? So, we had demos out there, on the other side of the room there in terms of the Groundbreakers Lounge. We had demos, we had all kinds of things, and there's so those were all for hackers. So I tried to put it in that language because that's the language that I prefer to speak. The next thing is, after you're done with your talk, this is really, really important. Stick around. You're very lucky to be on stage. And it's a privileged position for you to be. Stick around. People are going to want to ask you questions that might not want to ask you a question, while you're on stage, but they might want to grab you while you go off of stage. So stick around and answer questions. You're building a community, right? You have to interact directly with people, follow up with people, call them, send them email, follow up afterwards. I had this situation in Japan a couple of years ago, actually last year, it was last summer, where I was at a Linux conference up in Tokyo, and Linus Torvalds was there speaking, and he gave a keynote, kind of a session, and after it was over, He stuck around for about a half an hour answering questions. There's long line of people. So the keynote's over. Everyone is gone. And there's a long line of people waiting to basically have him sign a shirt or something. And I thought this was phenomenal. He just was giving all of his time. He didn't split, right? He didn't just leave. A lot of the more famous people split, right? And so don't be one of them. Stick around. So he stuck around, and I said, I want to meet him because I was the Open Solaris community manager, and Linux was our competitor, and he won and I lost, and I just want to introduce myself. So after everybody was finished, I said, "Hey, Linus, how you doing?" And he said, "Oh, hello." And I said, "I'm Jim Grazanzio, and the Open Solaris community manager." And he said, "Oh, I'm terribly sorry. And it was just I spoke to him for 20 minutes. And because I told him some interesting stories that happened, and he was listening, and it was a nice moment, right? I will never forget it, right? So that's all. Presentations are very, very important. You need to deliver your content, but use it as an opportunity to actually build your community. Okay, number 7 is conferences. Conferences, you shouldn't necessarily only think about conferences as a space to go present. Yes, you go present. You go there to listen. You might go there to observe and be a part of the audience and learn, right? But if you're a community builder, use conferences as a platform, a venue to do many things, right? So you're going to have your engineers and your project presenting. You might have your marketing people there learning, you're gathering information and participating. There's many, many other things that you can use that venue for simply because everybody is there. Everybody who's important to that particular technology is there. In this image here, this is a long time ago. This is 2004, right? This is ancient photograph here. Going from left to right, that's Simon Phipps, famous in the Java community and the OSI. He used to be president of OSI. Bruno Souza, he's a Java developer from Brazil. Tim O'Reilly, obviously the founder of the O'Reilly Conferences company and book publishing company. We all have Tim's books. Eric Raymond obviously goes way back into Linux and hacking community and the FOSS community. Brian Bellendorf is one of the founders of the Apache Software Foundation. Got a chance to meet these guys. I know Simon very, very well. Simon and Bruno very, very well. And I got a chance to meet these guys and interact with them. What we did in the Open Solaris project is we basically used the OSCON conference as a platform. Yes, we had our engineers there presenting. Yes, we did BOFs. Yes, we did user group meet. We did all that stuff, right? But we also got about 20 of the top open source developers, these people basically, right, in a room, a private room, the top room of this hotel, and we had a bunch of Solaris engineers there, and we basically said we got a couple hours. We want to talk to you guys about, how to open Solaris. You see, this is 2004. We were planning to open Solaris in mid 2005. All right. So we were in the process of cleaning the code, getting the infrastructure ready. But my goodness, how do you open up 10 million lines of code from a product that's been closed for years without missing any product cycles or anything like that, right? And there's a lot to learn about the open source community. What would we need on day one? So does the code have to be fully buildable, or could it be Swiss cheese? I mean, what are the issues that we need to know about? And we spent about 3 hours in that hotel room. It's probably about 40 people in the room. We had about 20 open source developers, some of the most famous names that because everybody's at OSCON. They're all there, right? So we gathered them all together. Denise Cooper, actually, and Simon Phipps set this meeting up. And it was fantastic. It was really, really great. We learned a lot about what to do. And it's important that you think of a conference as a venue because it draws so many people. And I know we're obviously all home now. There are no conferences now, but we certainly have had them in the past. You've had the experience, and we will have them again in the future. I was in Brussels earlier in the year for FODSTAM. FODSTAM is a 2-day weekend conference, but I was very, very interested to see that for the entire week before FODSTAM, there were dozens of events that were going on. Companies were there, developers were there. There were all kinds of events that were going on. Those people knew completely that conference was a venue to do many, many things. So the last point on conferences is when you go to these events, look for ways to build tradition. All right. You're going to be bringing your community members there. You're searching for new community members there. Potentially you'll be going repeatedly, right, into these events. Like there's a Sangam every year. There's a Yatra every year. There's an OSCON every year. There's a Java one every year. These kinds of things. If you're building a community, look for things that you can do to build tradition for your community, something that you do every year people can look forward to. That's one of the ways that you build culture, and it's the glue that actually holds your community together. So conferences, very, very important. Number 8 is infrastructure. Infrastructure is the physical equipment that you need to support a community. And it's everything. It's websites, it's demos, it's video, it's audio, it's everything. That in that image there is my colleague Javed Mohammed. Some of you might know him. He's my partner. We do streaming interviews together. This is from an event at Open World in Singapore last, I think it was in March. It was a really good event. What he's doing there is that he is setting up our stage, our Groundbreakers Live stage. Some of you, I'm sure, have sat in the chair there with us and done interviews. This is my camera. That's my kit. This is our streaming box here. This is our sound system. We got the video and speakers, right? This little stage here is some pretty serious equipment, and it's as a community builder, this is one of your tasks. This is basic project management. All right, you have to be thinking about all the different physical infrastructure that you need. Now, behind the camera is the full Groundbreakers Live lounge. I'm sorry. It's the full Groundbreakers lounge, developers lounge. It's filled with demos. You guys have seen it. You guys have been to Code One and Open World, it is a huge amount of physical infrastructure that our team manages. Javed, me, Jen, Linda, Chris, all these people, Bob. And so, it's, if you have, like, for instance, an open source project, some of the infrastructure that you need, obviously you need a website, you need SCM systems, you need testing systems, you need defect tracking systems, communications, blogs, wikis, mailing lists, and things like that. Now, obviously, GitHub has abstracted many of these individual tools up into one, basically like a cloud service, right? But years ago, you didn't have that. You had to build all these things yourself. And depending on your project, you still might have some of these things out separately. Security is an issue. You got to think about actually when you're bringing infrastructure in and out of conferences, transportation, immigration issues, shipping issues, all kinds of things. So community building, we think in terms of going to conferences and meeting people and showing slides and having parties and dinners and talking about technology. But somebody has to make the actual event come together. and that's very physical. That there's nothing digital about that. Stuff has to get shipped on trucks, put in airplanes, and sucked through customs. This is a very, very real logistical issue, and it is absolutely a part of the community building process. And then after you have it all set up, and you want to stream live, do you have a fast internet connection? Is it 1 megabit per second or is it 100 megabits per second? Because you're not going to stream on 1 megabit per second. So it doesn't matter if you ship all this stuff all over the world and you land and you have no internet, right? There's 100 things to worry about. So it makes a difference. Also, you need backups. I was in Dubai, actually with Javed, and somebody knocked over my camera and wrecked it. A $5,000 camera, poof, gone. Fortunately, Javed has his camera there, so we just swapped it out. So things that might break frequently, or things that might get knocked over, have some backups. Can't believe I lost the camera. Okay, governance, number 9. If you're building a community or even participating in a community, you're going to need some sort of governance system. Open source communities have these written right on their websites. They are detailed. They're basically constitutions. It's a government, basically, right? Your government has a constitution or some sort of document that articulates the governmental structure. Communities need them too. Now, again, if you're small, you don't need this. But if you're going to have tens of thousands of users and you're taking source code in from hundreds and hundreds of people around the world under all different licenses and different languages and cultures and stuff, you need a constitution. You need something to document how to do all that. What's the governmental system for your community? In this image here, this is the Open Solaris Governing Board in 2009. This is the only image I had of the board, actually, because we met digitally mostly. We didn't have that many physical meetings. And I was actually on the board a year earlier in 2008. I found it very challenging. It's quite a you need a lot of negotiation skills, political skills, because it's a social exercise for sure, but very, very challenging to helped to create the constitution for the community. I was involved in the creation of the original Open Solaris Community Advisory Board, because I went way back on the project. I started on the project in its infancy, so I was involved in all these things. This is the board. This is a Community One in 2009, and we were holding meetings there, and I might have been the secretary at this time, actually. Some things that you need to know about that are sort of gotchas. Your community, your governance, many people think it's just the social structure, but if it's an open source project where you'd be integrating code, is the social structure sort of consistent with the development methodology, right? If you're taking code contributions, how are you taking those code contributions? Do you take code from anybody? Obviously not, right? So how do people earn their way up to the process of taking code? All the testing that's involved and things like that. The social structure of the community needs to be perfectly in sync with the engineering processes. Now, some communities, it's one document that articulates everything. The problem we had on Open Solaris is that when we opened the code, Solaris internally already had a well-defined, development methodology, right? Because it was a mature product and it was already a distributed development methodology, but so it just wasn't open source. And then we open sourced the code, and we started to build a community, and we layered on top of that social structures, things like voting. All right, we had to have web apps for all these things. We had like 20 web apps on the website, all for specific functions like code review, source integration. Well, one of them was for voting. We had to build an application specifically for voting. So, okay, you got your voting application. Now, what system of voting are you going to use? If you just look around in all different countries in elections, how people vote for their leaders, there's different systems of voting. You got to choose that, right? That should be a community decision, right? It's not necessarily yours. It could be, but not necessarily yours as the leader. Other things you need to consider is the leadership model, social organization, conflict resolution. I mentioned before trolls. There's even under the best of circumstances, you're going to have conflicts on the community, let alone people who just are acting like trolls, right? Separate from them. You're just going to have genuine conflicts because this is just people, right? These are not machines; they're people. They have different opinions, and so how do you resolve conflicts? This needs to be a part of the governance, right? How do you remove somebody from a community? You ever try that? I have. It is some. These are some serious issues. Um, so that's basically it. Governance, very necessary to consider for any kind of a community at scale. Okay, leadership. So to me, leadership is demonstrated via action. I know people have a lot of definitions of leadership. I tend not to like a lot of the definitions. To me, it's action. It's very simple. Are you doing anything, right? Talk is kind of meaningless to me. A lot of people talk. The only thing that I look for in terms of leadership, in terms of people who are substantive, are people who do things. You talk a lot about this feature is terrible. Okay, write a new one. So give me a patch that fixes it if it's broken. If you break something, send a patch. So don't just say it's broken. Fix it. And so it's palpable how many people just don't realize this, that leadership is about action. And if you're going to be building a community, people look around for people who are doing things, people who tend to on the side of action, because that's how you build any kind of community of merit. Meritocracy is the goal. This way, everybody can move up, so based on their natural abilities or things they learn and the work that they contribute. This image is from the Community Leadership Summit in 2018. I've been to about 5 or 6 of these conferences. Jono Bacon is the leader. He's the guy here on the left next to the sign. Jono, as you might know, is pretty famous in the Linux community. He was the Ubuntu community manager for many, many years. And I learned a lot by observing him and hanging out with him at these conferences here. This conference is 2 days. It's a weekend before OSCON in Portland every year. And it gets to be about 100 or 200 people or so. The last couple of years, it's been more, maybe even closer to 300. And everybody you see there are community managers from open source projects around the world. And it's an unconference, so it's flexible. Anybody can present, anybody can talk, and all the issues are about building communities, how to build community, how to take contributions, how to handle licensing issues, conflict resolution, all these issues that leaders have to deal with, and of course leadership as well, how to be a leader, how to look for leaders. Leadership is explicitly and specifically discussed. So you should define your leadership and build for it. Don't assume that it just happens naturally. Again, all the natural processes of communities are fine when it's small, right? People get together, they gather, they help, they contribute, they do all these things naturally. That's just a part of human nature. But scale is the issue. If you're going to scale things, you're going to need some leaders. And what type of leader do you want? You have to specifically, build for that and seek that out. Universities, if you want to build a community, if you want to scale the community, if you want to make sure the community is around in the future, you need to go back to school. I'm really serious about this. I've been a champion of this at Sun and at Oracle. I say it inside of Oracle all the time. We need to be in universities, because that's where the young people are. It's that simple, you know. They do not think like you do. I don't care. You haven't been in college in a few years. You're no longer a college kid, right? Your mind is different. You've been out in the world. You need to go. You need to go back to school and mix with these kids because they think very, very differently. Now, obviously, they don't know everything, but that's the point. That's the whole point. They can look at things from a very different, perspective. And there's three groups at universities. You got students, professors, and administrators. All three. You need all three. They have all different roles. This particular image is from 2009. Again, a long time ago. I oftentimes wonder where these kids are right now. I spent a couple of days with them in Indonesia, and I remember distinctly. I got off stage. I was doing a Open Solaris talk about getting involved in the community. And a couple of the kids came over to me, and I say kids because they're 20 years younger than me, right? So, but they're in their 20s, right? These are computer science students, and they come over, and they were already familiar with the Open Solaris project because we had been open for a few years by then, and they asked me how they can build a distribution of Open Solaris, and I said, well, we've got buckets and buckets of code. You can take that code, glue it together, skin it, and put together your own distribution. Like just there are many distributions of Linux. You can have your own distribution of Open Solaris, right? I connected them to the team in India because they had a distribution of Open Solaris called Belinux. I connected these kids with the Java developer. I'm sorry, the Japanese developers in Japan who had a distribution of Open Solaris called Jaris. And there was a group of people, developers in China who were also working on a distribution of Open Solaris. So the point is, it was very, very cool. I got to connect these college kids to other teams globally, and they were interacting globally, trying to put together a distribution of Open Solaris for their, whether it was a university or whatever, but it was specific to Indonesia. It's just a fantastic thing to do. Now you will run into language issues. You're talking about Indonesian kids talking to Japanese kids, talking to Indian kids, talking to German kids, etc. Right? But hey, they work it out, right? Really, really interesting. Go back to school. Number 12, local and global. I'll speed up a little bit here. Building communities, you're never going to have just one community. You're going to have a community of communities, right? And that's a good thing. But you do need to understand that when you're building communities, you have to, plan for that. This is the last physical conference I was at since the virus, fun. And this is in Hawaii. Nice place to be in February. The guy there in the red shorts right in front, that's Chris Thallinger. He's a compiler engineer at Twitter. This is his event. This is 3 years running. It's an unconference. It was initially focused on Java, but now it's really open to many distinct, many diverse technologies. The point is, Chris was adamant about bringing in external developers to Hawaii to mix with the local people to build a technology community in Hawaii that was diverse, local and global. Marketing, if you want to build communities, if you're inside of a company, let's say, you need to go find your marketing friends at the company because they can help you tremendously. This is a coding contest here in China. If you look on those screens are running Open Solaris. The tools that they're using are Sun Studio tools, so C, C++, and NetBeans, right? So the Sun marketing teams in China worked with these universities. And this coding contest was thousands and thousands and thousands of kids in China, right? Across the whole country of China. They all used Open Solaris as their machine. They all have actually they all have machines next to them. This is before cloud, okay? Long time ago, 2008. But Sun China had a relationship with the universities. That's the point. They had a marketing relationship. They had a business relationship with these universities. And through negotiations and donations, et cetera, we were able to get them to use Open Solaris on their coding contest. Simultaneously, I would work with the engineering teams to build communities and user groups at the universities. And we ended up with about 20 user groups in China with thousands and thousands and thousands of developers. So collaborate with your marketing teams. Actually, these are two here of the Solaris engineers in China, Rita and Fiona. I say advocacy here because although they were engineers, they understood the concept of many-to-many conversations, and they actually helped set up a lot of the user groups in China, and they taught me a lot about dealing with communities in China, because every country you go to, the communities are different, right? The culture is different, the languages are different, and the technology situation in the country is different as well. But what struck me about Rita and Fiona was that they were able to do huge events, a lot like Sai and actually you guys, just massive events, without losing sight of the fact that this was a many-to-many conversation. It wasn't a system where they were telling the community what to do. It was a system where they set up a system where you could gather together and the community could interact with each other, right? It wasn't just from the company to the community. It mixed both ways. And this is at the Open Solaris Engineering Summit in Santa Cruz, California in 2008. And good friends, really good friends of mine, and really fantastic engineers. Okay, 15, last slide, is legal. If you're going to be building a community and it's going to scale, you need to get really good with trademarks, copyright, contributor agreements, source code licenses, content licenses, patents, all these things. Okay, these are all legal things that you need to know when you're building a community, because the bottom line is you're taking assets in, right? You have to manage those assets well. The things have to be licensed appropriately. And so this is a whole separate discussion, but it needs to be in the top 15 for sure, because somebody's always looking. And that's the only image I can find to illustrate that point. That is me in a hotel elevator in San Francisco at Java 1. A little trivia, that was the last Java 1 in 2017. Yeah, so legal. Make sure you get to know your lawyers in your company. Teach them what you're doing with your community. Ask them to explicitly teach you about all these issues. It should be going both ways. The lawyer shouldn't necessarily dictate to you what to do, because they don't necessarily know what the community is, right? So you have to teach your lawyers about the open source concepts. And there's whole books on this now, okay? So there's no excuse for the lawyers not to know that these things exist. Here's some resources. You can get these slides later. I'm coming up to the end here. But my favorite is the Clue Chain Manifesto. Some of these are books, some of these are videos. The Faces of Open Source is a photography website with some beautiful photography of very famous open source people. So just search on Faces of Open Source here. Cathedral in the Bazaar is a book from Eric Raymond. It's old now, but everything in there still applies. Clue Train, as I mentioned, is 20 years old. It's about open source marketing. If you're doing any kind of communications or marketing, it's the best book out there. Art of Community, Open Sources. These are all really good resources for building communities. And these links here are basically background information for these slides. The first link is basically a whole web page articulating all these principles 1 through 15. And you can read the rest there. These two images, that's from Sun Microsystems reunion in 2019, in the fall of 2019. That's John Gage, Eric Schmidt, James Gosling, and Andy Beckelsheim, and Bill Joy. So you got the creation of Java. You got a whole bunch of Java 1 there in Java in your John Gage. He was the CM of the community of Java 1 for years. You know, Bill Joy with BSD, Solaris, Andy with Spark and hardware, and obviously James Gosling with Java. Got a chance to work with these guys, and it was really, really an incredible experience. Learned a great deal about open source, open standards, and building communities. And that is it. Thank you very much.
Hey, thank you, Jim. I think it's a lot of things to digest as a community. It's really, really good information, and thank you for your continued support, especially taking interviews from all the speakers and the community. Even that short period of time interviews comes with a really good quality of information and message. And I hope you'll continue the same support as
Yep,
always.
absolutely.
And this is a really so anyone wants to ask any questions, please put it in chat window, sorry, Q&A section. Maybe you can take a couple of questions meanwhile, but other than that, let me share my screen. You can see Jim Twitter handler here, Jim Gris, and that is the only way you can connect to Jim. And if you want to say thank you, or if you want to ask any community questions, please reach out to Jim. He's very active in all the social media channels, especially I think especially in India, we most of us use Facebook. So he's very active in Facebook. He's active in LinkedIn as well as Twitter. So any questions coming from anyone? If not, with that, I think, yeah, we will close the session, Jim. And thank you for all
Cool.
your support. And bye for now.
Great. Thanks. Bye bye now.
Bye.